Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. If you're ready to crank up your motivation, you are in the right place.
I'm ready. Let's go.
We're diving into Daniel Pink's Drive today, and we're going beyond your typical business book summary to uncover what really gets us going. And spoiler alert, it might not be what you think.
It's definitely a perspective shift.
Big time. Okay, so think about this. We're practically hardwired to believe that rewards and punishments, those classic carrots and sticks, are the secrets to, like, a productive life, right?
That's what we're told.
Yeah. But Pink says, hold on, this is where things get interesting. This whole carrot and stick thing, it can actually backfire, especially in the kind of world we live in now.
Totally. Think about it. When someone offers you a reward for doing something, it's like your brain zeroes in on that prize, right?
Yeah, gotta get that.
Exactly. And the actual task you're doing, the enjoyment of it, it kind of fades into the background. And that might be okay for like super basic stuff, but for the kind of work that needs creativity, that needs you to think outside the box.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It can be. Ping talks about this study where they had people trying to solve these creative problems, and the ones who were offered a reward, they actually did worse.
No way. Seriously?
Seriously. They got so fixated on getting the reward, their thinking actually narrowed, they couldn't come up with those really innovative solutions.
Wow, that is wild. Okay, so if dangling a carrot isn't the answer, what is? How do we unlock that deeper motivation, the kind that keeps us going because we want to, not because we're getting something for it?
That is the million-dollar question. And luckily, Pink has some answers for us.
Lay it on us.
He calls them the power trio: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. These are the real keys to staying motivated and performing at our best, especially now.
Okay, autonomy, mastery, purpose. I like the sound of that, but let's break it down. Give me the crash course on each one. Starting with autonomy, what is that in a nutshell?
Autonomy is basically having the freedom and control over how you work.
Got it. So not just about what you're doing, but how you're doing it.
Exactly. It's about having a say in how you approach your work. And it's not just about the big picture stuff.
Yeah.
Sure, having some control over the projects you take on is great, but autonomy also applies to those smaller, everyday decisions.
Like what?
How you manage your time, the tools you use to get stuff done, even how you choose to tackle a problem. When people have that sense of ownership over their work, it just makes them more engaged, more creative, more invested in the outcome.
Makes total sense. It's like that human need to feel like we've got some control over our lives, you know? Even within the structure of a job. Or we've got autonomy, that freedom to choose our own adventure. What about mastery? Where does that fit into this whole intrinsic motivation thing?
So mastery is all about tapping into that human desire to get better at something, to hone our skills and build our knowledge.
Right, we all want to be good at stuff.
Exactly. And it's that amazing feeling of making progress, of seeing how far we've come. And here's the key. Mastery isn't about reaching some kind of finish line or becoming the absolute best. It's about the journey, the constant learning and growth.
Love that. It's like always striving to be a little bit better than yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm all about that. But in a world that's so obsessed with results, how do we actually cultivate that sense of mastery?
Such a good question. And more importantly, how do we take these concepts, autonomy and mastery, and use them in our own lives? Whether we're talking about our jobs, passion projects, or just finding more satisfaction in our everyday lives.
These are big questions.
They are, and luckily, we have the rest of this deep dive to explore them.
So before we jumped into all this talk of autonomy, we were in the thick of mastery, which feels so important, but kind of daunting, right? Like, how do we actually weave it into our lives when we're already juggling a million things?
It's a common concern, for sure, but the good news is that embracing mastery doesn't have to mean a complete life overhaul.
Oh, thank goodness. So it's more about, like, baby steps.
Exactly. It's about shifting our mindset and then looking for those small, everyday chances to learn and grow, those bite-sized mastery moments we often overlook.
Okay, I like where this is going. Give me an example. What are some of those little wins we could be celebrating?
Well, think about the last time you picked up a new skill at work. Maybe you figured out a new software program or nailed a presentation technique. Heck, even mastering a more efficient way to wrangle your inbox counts.
Oh, for sure. Inbox zero, here I come. But seriously, I see what you mean. It's about those aha moments when things click.
Precisely. Those are mastery in action. And the more we actively create those experiences for ourselves, the more we tap into that intrinsic motivation to keep growing.
Okay, I'm starting to get the hang of this. Small wins, big motivation. So we've got autonomy, that sense of control over how we work, And we've got mastery, that constant drive to learn and grow. But Pink's got one more piece to his motivation puzzle, right? Purpose.
Right. And purpose, that's a big one. It's about connecting to something bigger than ourselves, finding meaning in the work we do.
This is where things get really interesting, but also kind of tricky. Because let's be real, not everyone's job comes with a built-in sense of saving the world, you know?
For sure, it's a real struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah, like if your day-to-day is mostly processing invoices, where's the grand purpose in that?
I hear you, but even in roles that might not seem inherently glamorous, there's always a bigger picture if you know where to look.
Okay, I'll bite. How do we go about finding that bigger picture when we're knee-deep in invoices?
Let's stick with that example, actually. So yeah,
Yeah.
processing invoices might seem pretty tedious on the surface, but zoom out a bit. Those invoices are essential to the company's financial well-being.
True. Can't argue with that.
They keep the lights on, right? They make sure employees get paid, allow for investments in new projects, all of which contribute to the company's overall mission. So even if you're not on the front lines, you're still part of something larger.
It's like finding the why behind the what, even in the most ordinary tasks.
Exactly. Sometimes that sense of purpose comes from the people we work with, the customers we serve, or even the ripple effect our work has on the world, however small it may seem. Pink talks about how even folks with what might be considered ordinary jobs find extraordinary meaning when they tap into that purpose.
I love that. It's like shifting from, ugh, I have to do this, to, I get to be a part of this.
You nailed it. That shift in perspective from have to get to, it changes everything. Suddenly, we're not just going through the motions, we're showing up with intention, energy, a sense of purpose.
This is resonating with me on a deep level. Okay, so we've got these three powerful elements: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. But let's get practical. How do we actually put these things into action in our everyday lives?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
And thankfully, Pink gives us some solid strategies for bringing more of these elements into our work and our lives.
Okay, let's talk strategy. I think we could all use a little more autonomy, mastery, and purpose in our lives, don't you think?
Absolutely. And Pink suggests that instead of giving you a step-by-step guide, it's more about asking yourself the right questions.
So we're back and we're ready to dive into those practical tips from Pink, the ones that can help us tap into more autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Where do we even start?
Well, instead of just giving us a to-do list, Pink, he wants us to do a little digging first, a little self-discovery. It's all about asking ourselves the right questions.
I like that, getting introspective. So it's not about finding a one-size-fits-all solution. It's about figuring out what works for us as individuals.
Exactly. So let's start with autonomy. Pink suggests we ask ourselves this: where in my work do I feel the most creatively stuck? Where do I feel the most stifled?
Powerful question. It's not about complaining, right? It's about identifying those areas where we feel stuck.
Exactly. Once you zeroed in on those areas, then you can start brainstorming. How can you bring back a little autonomy, even in small ways?
Yeah, gotta start somewhere.
Right. Maybe you can negotiate for a little more wiggle room in your schedule. Or maybe you propose a totally different approach to a project.
It's about taking ownership whenever we can, even if we're not in control of absolutely everything.
Absolutely. And you know what? Those little wins often lead to bigger changes later down the road. Now, let's talk mastery. Pink says we need to change how we think about learning.
Okay, I'm listening.
We often box it in, think it's something that happens in a classroom or a workshop, but what if we saw it as this ongoing process? Something we can find in our everyday lives.
That makes sense. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day grind and totally forget that we can learn anywhere, anytime.
Exactly. So ask yourself this: what are some things I can do today, even small things, that challenge me, that help me grow? Maybe you read an article about your industry, or you take an online course, or you just sit down and talk to someone at work who sees things differently than you.
Love it. Always be learning, right? Okay, so we've covered autonomy and mastery. Now for the big one, purpose. This one feels a little, I don't know, intimidating, especially if your job isn't like saving the rainforest or something.
I get it. It can feel like a tall order. But Pink reminds us that every single job, every single task contributes to something bigger than ourselves, even if it's not immediately obvious. He wants us to ask ourselves, what's the impact of my work, even if it's a few steps removed from the big picture?
It's about connecting the dots, that ripple effect.
Yes. Maybe the work you do keeps your company running smoothly, which means they can keep innovating, keep providing valuable services to others. Or maybe it's simply about the satisfaction you find in a job well done, which, let's be honest, that has a huge impact on your own well-being, your relationships. It all trickles down.
Wow. Finding the personal connection to the bigger picture, even in the smallest tasks. This conversation has been so eye-opening.
It really has. And the beauty of Drive is that it doesn't just throw these concepts at you. It gives you the tools to actually use them, to find what feels authentic and meaningful for your life.
Absolutely. It's about taking control of our own motivation, finding that drive within. So, for our listeners out there, if they only remember one thing from this entire conversation, what should it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. But if I had to choose, I'd say this. The next time you feel stuck, unmotivated, like you're just going through the motions, think about Kink's trio: autonomy, mastery, purpose. Ask yourself, where's the autonomy in this situation? Where's the mastery? Where's the purpose? I bet you if you can tap into even one of those things, you'll reignite that spark, that inner drive.
It's such an important reminder. It's not about some massive life overhaul. It's about making these small, conscious shifts that can completely change how we feel about our work and ourselves. And on that note, listeners, we want to hear from you. What really resonated with you today? What will you do differently after this deep dive? Keep those aha moments coming, and until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and most importantly, keep that drive alive.